4 underwater explosions, 2 destroyed pipelines, one of the boldest acts of sabotage in modern history, and no one claims responsibility. Was it Russia? Was it the West? Or a rogue team hiding in plain sight? Dive into the real-life thriller behind the Nord Stream attack, where the truth is stranger and far deadlier than fiction. Whispers in the Water. September 26, 2022. Baltic Sea. The Baltic Sea was quiet that night. Calm waves lapped against the hull of a small sailing vessel, drifting gently under a darkening sky. The ship's captain checked his radar. 2 red blips pulsed ominously on the screen. Unidentified disturbances just ahead. He squinted into the black water, but saw nothing. Still, something was off. He radioed a nearby vessel. The voice on the other end was tense. "We're seeing strange whirlpools. Something's churning the water." Then came the smell. Sharp, sour. A rush of gas filled the captain's nostrils. His eyes stung. His instincts kicked in. He contacted Swedish authorities immediately. Within minutes, sensors confirmed it. Methane was billowing into the sea at an uncontrollable rate. An environmental disaster was unfolding. But it wasn't just a leak. It was multiple leaks, 4 to be exact. And they weren't natural. Just below the surface, buried under 260 feet of cold, dark water, 2 of the world's most critical gas pipelines, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, had been violently torn open. These massive arteries ran from Russia to Germany, supplying nearly half of Germany's natural gas. Each was reinforced, pressurized, and designed to be virtually indestructible. Yet now they were hemorrhaging gas into the sea. Explosions. That's what Danish seismologists would later confirm. 4 distinct underwater blasts at 2 separate locations, nearly 50 miles apart. It wasn't just sabotage. It was precision sabotage. By morning, satellite images showed a boiling, frothing square kilometer of ocean. A white cauldron of rising methane. Helicopters hovered above the chaos. Europe's energy security was in crisis, and a new invisible war had begun. Authorities were stunned. The Baltic Sea was one of the most closely monitored bodies of water in the world. Large ships were required to transmit their locations constantly. And yet someone had managed to slip through the net. Someone with the power and skill to dive deep, plant high-grade explosives, and vanish without a trace. Within hours, whispers of war turned into roars of accusation. Had Russia blown up its own pipeline to further weaponize gas during the war in Ukraine? Or had NATO struck first, cutting off Putin's leverage? Was this a false flag operation? Or something far more complex? Something orchestrated by a shadow team that no one even knew existed? One thing was certain, this was no accident. Europe's energy lifeline had been severed in a single night. No one claimed responsibility. No one knew what would come next. But one truth rippled across the globe like the gas through the sea. The most audacious act of sabotage since World War II had just been unleashed, and the hunt for the saboteurs had begun. Enemies and ghost ships. The world points fingers. The morning after the explosions, the world awoke in confusion and suspicion. The twin Nord Stream pipelines lay crippled beneath the Baltic Sea, billowing methane like a wounded beast. But the real firestorm was happening above water, in the war rooms, newsrooms, and intelligence hubs of Europe and beyond. Who did this? All eyes turned to the usual suspect, Russia. The logic was chillingly simple. Russia had the motive. The country was locked in a brutal war with Ukraine, and Europe had begun distancing itself from Russian gas. With the pipelines destroyed, Moscow could claim force majeure and dodge billions in penalties for breaking gas contracts. No pipeline, no lawsuits. Then came the data, satellite images, and naval logs. Just 4 days before the explosions, a Danish naval vessel spotted 6 Russian ships in the exact area where the blast would occur. They weren't broadcasting their locations. Their AIS transponders were off, making them dark ships. One in particular stood out, the SS-750, a Russian special operations vessel equipped with a mini-submarine and cranes. Perfect tools for undersea sabotage. Coincidence or evidence? But just as quickly as fingers pointed at Moscow, They twisted toward Washington. In the foggy archives of press footage, a video resurfaced. A moment in time, a warning. President Joe Biden, standing beside German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in February 2022, just days before Russia invaded Ukraine, had said it clearly. If Russia invades, there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it. Prophecy? Threat? Promise? The statement reverberated like an echo from the future. And then came the bombshell. Seymour Hersh, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and legendary whistleblower, dropped a nuclear theory. U.S. Navy divers had planted explosives during a NATO exercise in the summer of 2022. According to Hersh, a Norwegian Navy minesweeper and surveillance aircraft assisted the covert op. The mission? Cut out Russian gas and make room for American liquefied natural gas. The world media erupted. If true, it meant NATO allies had sabotaged critical infrastructure belonging to Germany and Russia, without telling anyone. A new Cold War suddenly didn't seem so cold. But Hersh's story began to unravel. His claims were built on a single anonymous source. Flight data didn't match. The ships he cited weren't even near the blast site. Intelligence experts cast doubt on the story. Hersh, now 88, refused to comment further. And yet the damage was done. Trust fractured, theories multiplied, headlines screamed. Russia denied everything. The U.S. denied everything. But someone had clearly done something. Meanwhile, in the intelligence community, far from the noise, a cryptic phone call was made. A seasoned German journalist rang a trusted source in espionage circles. Was it Russia? He asked. There was a long silence. A new theory was taking shape, stranger, riskier, and closer to home. The ghost yacht. A small boat with a deadly mission. While the world debated Russia and the United States, a quieter, stranger story began to surface. One that didn't involve nuclear navies or presidential threats, but instead a modest sailboat bobbing across the Baltic like a ghost. Her name was Andromeda, a 50-foot German sailing yacht, unassuming, old and forgettable. But what German investigators uncovered would redefine everything. It started with a tip, a charter record. The Andromeda had been rented in late August 2022, just weeks before the explosions. The booking was made through a Polish travel agency. Payment wired, 11,900 euros. But something didn't add up. The paperwork included 2 passports, one Romanian, one Bulgarian. The names? Fake. The documents? Forged. The Romanian ID belonged to Stefan Macu, but when journalists tracked him down in Moldova, the man was stunned. The passport number matched one of his old expired documents, long lost. He had no idea his identity was being used in connection with the largest act of sabotage in modern European history. The Bulgarian ID, equally fake. Whoever rented the Andromeda had cloaked themselves in stolen names, fake credentials, and a shell company as cover. Still, that boat had sailed, and it had carried something dangerous. A team of journalists descended on Rügen, a German island in the Baltic, where the Andromeda had docked before the attack. Locals remembered the crew, 6 individuals acting like casual tourists, but behaving oddly. They loaded grocery bags and tanks into the yacht with quiet urgency. Not diving tanks for sport, but industrial compressed air cylinders, far too many for a weekend trip. Later forensic analysis would reveal what those tanks really contained. Traces of HMX, also known as octogen, a military-grade underwater explosive, the same chemical compound found at the Nord Stream blast sites. The boat itself held more secrets. DNA, fingerprints, a single barefoot shoe, a water bottle. In the toilet, more HMX residue. On the galley table, even more. The story was turning. This was no Russian naval operation, no American Black Ops mission. This was DIY sabotage, crafted with precision, but carried out from a second-hand yacht using burner phones and prepaid SIM cards. Investigators began to suspect the unthinkable, that the most high-stakes act of geopolitical sabotage since World War II had been executed not by governments, but by a rogue team of operatives posing as tourists, sailing in a modest charter vessel, slipping past the watchful eyes of the world's most surveilled sea. But who were they? One crucial link emerged. The Polish travel agency that paid for the yacht was, in fact, a shell company. Behind it, a Ukrainian businessman known to operate in the shadows of Kiev's underground economy. The Andromeda wasn't just a boat, it was a ghost, quiet, overlooked, and deadly. And it was about to become the centerpiece in the world's most sensitive, most politically explosive investigation. Operation Diameter. Planning the perfect crime? Kyiv, spring 2022. The war had changed everything. In a cramped, rented office tucked away from public view, a secret team was forming under the guidance of a man known only to a few by name, Roman Chervinsky. A legend in Ukrainian military intelligence circles, Chervinsky had seen the battlefield. But this would be different. This would be war beneath the waves. The mission was codenamed Operation Diameter, simple in name, staggering in ambition. The objective? Sabotage the twin Nord Stream pipelines, Putin's billion-euro power lines into the heart of Europe. Not just infrastructure, but a lifeline of influence, cash, and control. Cut the cord, and Russia would bleed. The team, 6 operatives, a ragtag mix of civilians and soldiers, among them, a heating engineer turned scuba instructor, a petite Ukrainian woman with a diving school as a cover, her pale, boyish husband, another deep-sea expert, and a thick-set military commander known only as Rubik, whose sheer presence radiated authority. They barely knew each other, but shared a singular purpose. Their training was intense, weeks of planning, gear testing, and logistics. Quiet drills, secret communications. They acquired high-powered HMX explosives, rebreather diving systems, burner phones, and forged documents. Everything had to be perfect. One slip, and they were dead, or worse. On September 6, 2022, they set sail from Rostock aboard the Andromeda, posing as tourists. By now, they were ghosts, armed with fake identities, a clutter of diving tanks, and bags of groceries to keep up appearances. The plan: chart a route across the Baltic, dive at night, attach time charges, and vanish before anyone noticed. But nothing ever goes as planned. The boat was falling apart. The autopilot was broken, the engine wheezed like an old farm tractor, and the wood creaked at every turn. A Baltic storm rolled in mid-September, 20-knot winds, 7-foot waves, forcing the crew to take shelter in a tiny Swedish harbor. One more day lost. When the skies cleared, seasickness hit half the team. The dives were brutal. 260 feet down, cold and pitch black. The pressure crushed their bodies and visibility was barely 6 feet. Each bomb had to be placed with surgical precision along the massive pipeline seams. They dove with weighted ropes and makeshift buoys fashioned from trash bags. Every movement was rehearsed, but adrenaline distorted time. Each explosive was equipped with a timer, set for September 26. They planted 6 charges in total. On September 23rd, the Andromeda returned to Rostock. The crew disembarked silently, vanishing into the civilian world they'd left behind. Then 3 days later, at dusk, the timers reached 0. 4 explosions, a gas inferno. Europe's energy artery ripped apart beneath the sea. The mission had worked. Almost. One of Nord Stream 2's twin pipes had survived the blast. A missed target. A reminder that even the most audacious plans can fall just short of perfection. But by then, the Andromeda was empty. The saboteurs were gone. And Operation Diameter had already changed the world. Shadows in the bureaucracy. Suspects vanish. Questions multiply. By the start of 2023, the puzzle was beginning to fit together. Fingerprints lifted from the Andromeda matched records in a classified database. DNA evidence linked back to a single man. A water bottle, a boot print, even a hair found in the yacht's bathroom. And then, the photo. A van racing down a rural road near the German coast. A speed camera caught it, blurry but enough. Inside, a man sitting in the passenger seat next to the driver. Ukrainian plates, the timestamp, just days before the explosions. Investigators tracked down the vehicle, then the driver. His testimony was electric. "He was just some guy I was driving to the harbor," the driver said. "He had diving gear." The passenger's name, Vadim Z. The evidence was overwhelming. Germany's federal prosecutor issued a European arrest warrant in June 2024. Orders were clear: detain on site. But just as quickly as Vadim Z emerged from the shadows, he slipped right back into them. Polish authorities, who were expected to detain him, did nothing. Instead, on the morning of July 6, 2024, a BMW with Ukrainian diplomatic plates rolled up to the border checkpoint between Poland and Ukraine. Inside, sitting calmly in the passenger seat, was Vadim Z. No flags, no lights, no alarms. The guards let the car pass. The saboteur had escaped. Some say the Poles tipped him off, a quiet favor to Kyiv, a whispered warning to run. Others believe it was something darker, an effort to bury a truth too politically explosive to confront. Back in Berlin, pressure was mounting. Investigators had gathered damning evidence: fake passports, burner phones, explosive residue, and the trail of a well-planned operation. Yet they had only one suspect, and now he was gone. The rest of the Andromeda crew? Ghosts. No names, no faces, only fragments, forged documents from Moldova and Bulgaria, a Polish shell company with ties to a Kyiv businessman, and whispered reports of a covert Ukrainian unit trained in sabotage. But officially, no arrests, no charges, only silence. Behind closed doors, German officials debated: was Operation Diameter a rogue mission carried out by patriots without state permission? Or was it sanctioned at the highest level and then swiftly disowned when it succeeded too well? More troubling still, intelligence agencies had known something was coming. Months earlier, both the Dutch military intelligence and the CIA had warned Berlin about a Ukrainian team plotting to attack Nord Stream. The plan matched almost exactly what happened. And yet, no one stopped it. No one told the Navy. No one sounded the alarm. Was it incompetence or complicity? The deeper investigators dug, the more the story blurred. Motives became murky, allies grew evasive, and somewhere scattered across Europe, the rest of the saboteurs walked free, untouched, unseen. A perfect crime doesn't just depend on stealth. It depends on the shadows in the bureaucracy. A sabotage buried in silence. The pipeline lies broken, so does the truth. Deep beneath the choppy waters of the Baltic Sea, two steel serpents lie wounded and cold. The Nord Stream pipelines, once hailed as marvels of engineering, bridges of energy and diplomacy between East and West, are now nothing more than ghostly wreckage, silent, twisted, useless, built for billions, destroyed in minutes. Officially, the investigation is still ongoing. Unofficially, it's paralyzed. Investigators have DNA samples, forged passports, rental records, and a vanishing suspect. They have chemical traces of military-grade HMX explosives and surveillance of the Andromeda crew before and after the mission. They even have a likely ringleader. Roman Chervinsky, the Ukrainian intelligence officer, whispered to have orchestrated it all. But what they don't have is certainty. Not in the legal sense, not in the political one. No one has confessed. No one has stood trial. No one even admits the operation happened. The German prosecutor's office has gone quiet. Polish authorities shrug. The Ukrainian government denies involvement. The United States insists it had no role. Russia rages, blaming NATO. Meanwhile, NATO points fingers back. A swirl of accusations, counterclaims, and well-practiced diplomatic denials fills the void. The truth is trapped in a cage of geopolitics, too dangerous to name, too costly to ignore. Behind the scenes, the evidence continues to mount. Journalists discover classified memos, CIA warnings, and Dutch intelligence reports from months before the blasts. All of them point in the same direction, yet no government is willing to make the final accusation. Why? Because this wasn't just sabotage, it was an act of war, and calling it that could bring down alliances, upend fragile coalitions, and risk a spiraling global conflict. So instead, leaders do what they always do when the truth becomes too volatile. They bury it. The Andromeda returned to the charter company, scrubbed clean. A floating piece of history no one dares acknowledge. The saboteurs dispersed, living under new names in new countries, some back in Kiev, others possibly under quiet protection from intelligence agencies who looked the other way. The pipelines? Still broken, still leaking silence. Since March 2025, a new rumor circulates. A U.S. investor has expressed interest in buying and repairing Nord Stream 2. A strange twist, considering the pipeline's explosive history. Germany hasn't commented, Russia scoffs, and Europe watches, divided, wary, exhausted. The Nord Stream sabotage was supposed to be a warning, a message, a turning point. Instead, it became a riddle, a mystery with too many answers, and too many people willing to pretend it never happened. And so, beneath the waves, the twisted remains of Europe's most ambitious energy project rest in the dark, a symbol of broken deals, broken trust, and a truth drowned in diplomacy. Because in the end, the sea forgets nothing, but the world prefers not to remember.